What's up, Jets fans, and welcome to episode 12 of JetNation Live. We are your hosts, Dylan Tereman and Glenn Naughton. Folks, we thought we were going to plan for a show on Friday to get past the holiday coming up, but news changed our decision, and we're here live with you on Wednesday night because Rob Saleh took the podium at about 11:35 this morning and decided that Zach Wilson is no longer our starting quarterback, at least for this week. Mike White has taken his spot for this week, and Joe Flacco is the QB2, meaning Zach Wilson will not even be dressed for the game. He will be inactive. So let's just start right there, Glenn. How do we feel coming out of the news that Zach Wilson's not only not the starter, but he's now QB3 for the week?
Well, I think it's surprising in that, and I said this earlier, that I think a lot of people expected, myself included, I expected Zach to get the start and just be on a short leash. And it may have been a good time to do it because the Bears defense is, what are they, 24th in the league against the pass?
Yeah.
So this would have been the first really, bottom third of the league team that Zach would have faced in a while. But the team, I think this is Saleh. I think this has as much, if not more, to do with his comments than anything else. And he's got to show this team, he's got to show this locker room that, the work they're putting in matters. And I said this weeks ago in a conversation, I don't know if you remember when I was critical of Zach, or not even critical. I just said, look, the way Zach is playing right now, I don't know how you can't be at least a little bit concerned. Like, that was all I said.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
people are like, oh, you're not a fan. And they're 3-1 or whatever they were at the time, 3-0. And I'm just like, I'm trying to explain to people, like, his production is terrible. I get, like, you're winning games, but we've heard it a million times by now, but they were winning in spite of him. And people didn't want to see that. And as I said, before, the guy's on pace to throw 8 touchdowns this year. And I see fans that are like, this is so stupid. Why are they benching him? Like, you can't be a lot worse than he is. And he's all the things people want to say, all the excuses, the tough defenses. Listen, he is missing. He's missing high school throws. And you can't have a guy do that and then come out and say, I didn't let anybody down. You can't do it. So kudos to Robert Saleh for making the move now. And I think this sends a message to the locker room that they're not going to throw the season away on Zach Wilson's development. And now we got to see what Mike White's got.
Yeah, and I'll be completely honest. When JetNation put out their poll on Twitter of what to do with Zach Wilson, I, just like you, chose a short leash but start him. And unfortunately, I feel like that would be too little too late because Saleh's chance to pull Zach Wilson mid-game would have been last week to give yourself a chance to win against the Patriots, put yourself in a better position against the Bears, where now you've pulled Zach, or you didn't pull Zach and you lost, and now Mike White is the only chance you have. And Mike White could very well lose to the Bears. And now we're 6-5 and in a very deep hole in the playoff push. No tiebreaker to New England now, no tiebreaker to Cincinnati. So you kind of put yourself in a really big bind. But yeah, I thought short leash. I'm kind of happy that the decision has just come final that we're going to give Mike White the whole game because now you're not in Zach's head at all. I feel like you can sit him down. Hopefully he gets relaxed a little bit. But I was talking to a Jets friend of mine, and the one thing he said was anticipation. And I said, yeah, every week I look back on his film from the game before, and I find, I don't know, this season, maybe 10 throws with anticipation at an NFL level. And it's like,
Right.
That's not enough when you have 600 and some odd plays in your offense so far this season through 10 games, and you have 10 throws that are of NFL quality when it comes to anticipation. You got to stop waiting for your guys to come open, because at that moment they're already closed. That window's done.
Right.
If you have to see it open, you're too late already. And that's what Zach Wilson's problem is. I think you tweeted it out about the baseball player. I'm blanking on his name, but he had the yips. He had the yips, and that's exactly the similar thing. People that don't even watch football at a level that, a crazy person like you or I would can just look at Zach Wilson in that game and say, a quarterback is not supposed to do that stuff. So if you can't even pass an eye test to like a casual fan, it's time to pull the plug. And I think Saleh coming out, putting 52 over 1, because obviously everybody thought the development of Zach Wilson was going to trump everything this season, win-loss record, whatever happened. But obviously that's not the case. Rob Saleh, knows that we're in a position to win, and Zach Wilson holding us back is going to obviously fracture the locker room because we've seen the tweets that were taken back accidentally or what have you. I know
I
your video.
accidentally liked 4 dozen tweets.
Exactly. Your video was spot on. When that many people are coming out and saying, "Oh, this is a problem," obviously you got to do something. So Salah putting his foot down is good for me. I didn't expect Zach to just fully get, you know, inactive, but that's where we're at. And my initial thought when he said we have the intent of bringing him back on the field this season, I don't think Zach's actually coming back this season as the starter unless you're out of the playoff picture. And if that's the case, if you're not in the playoff picture, you have squandered the entire opportunity you had this season to be a team that was over expectation, but could actually be a threat in the playoffs. So I'm just looking at it a kind of half glass, half empty, which is not my style at all. But right now I'm looking at it like we could lose to the Bears, be 6-5 and just be in a terrible hole. So what are your thoughts about most of the things I said there and obviously what it means moving forward with the playoff push?
Well, I think as far as the Bears game goes, and listen, I'm not only saying this because it would improve the Jets' chances to win, but do you play Justin Fields against this Jets defense?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
the way this D line is, this front seven is playing right now, I wouldn't be thrilled about playing a healthy quarterback against them because they're
No.
going to take some hits. You're talking about a fracture in his non-throwing shoulder. I'd sit him. But the other thing is, if he plays, does he not run as much as he has been? So that that could be beneficial. And basically, if it's Justin Fields and they put the brakes on and tell him not to run, or Trevor Siemian, the Jets win this game. Like
Mhm.
the Jets aren't giving up more than 10, 13 points if that's the case. But if Fields plays and he does run and he doesn't hold back, he's got a chance to run for 200 yards and a couple touchdowns and completely change the dynamic. So I think that the Jets, they lose this game, of course, but if Fields is slowed or doesn't play, I think the Jets kind of catch a break here. Like it's a good opportunity, or the perfect time to get Mike White his first start of the year because he's not going to have to be lights out. And I think that as I said earlier, he's probably going to turn the ball over a couple times.
Yeah.
He's not Patrick Mahomes, right? But if he can also, while throw a couple picks, but find the end zone a few times. Again, it's not it's not likely, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility. He could go out there, play a really good game, and throw as many touchdowns as Zach Wilson has all year. So, I mean, you can't. This is the thing with people with the Mike White thing. They've been saying for weeks now. I've been hearing people say, "What are you going to do? Go to Mike White instead of Zach Wilson?" Like at this point, how is that worse?
Yep.
What is it about Mike White that you think he's going to go out there and throw for 2 yards in the second half this week? They're talking about Zach Wilson's potential as if it's production, and it's not. And the production has been terrible, and it's gotten to a point where And listen, I enjoyed the wins. I just want them to win football games, of course.
Yeah.
And I applauded Zach when he played better against Buffalo than he had all year. We didn't see him bailing as much as he had been previously, but he still, at the end of the day, hasn't been he's been good enough to win games when his defense has been lights out and the running game steps up. Even when they closed the game out against the Bills, how'd they do that? They ran it 10 times in a row. They
Yep.
almost cost themselves games by coming out and running the ball in passing situations because they have no faith in him.
Yep.
So that they've been playing him all year. And this is a good point. Who was saying this earlier? It may have been I had on Don LaGreca, Michael K, the Michael K show,
Mhm.
and Michael K made a great point. He said, if you're playing Zach Wilson and all he's doing is throwing the ball within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, you're not finding out if he's good anyway. What's he doing? Yeah, we need to see what we have in this kid, and every pass is going to be, a 3-yard pattern. So you're not finding anything out. So you may as well sit him. You may as well go to Mike White. And I think what you're going to see with Mike White, you talk about anticipation. My thing is, I think you're going to see more decisiveness. I think the
For
ball's
sure.
going to come out quicker. Again, he's not a superstar, but he's a veteran guy, and it's going to be interesting because he, just as we said with Zach this year, same applies to Mike White now. He's going to be playing with a really good arsenal. He's,
Mhm.
he put up some numbers last year. He made some bad throws, of course, but he did some good things with very little to work with. Now he's got a lot to work with. So maybe some of those picks that he threw last year, maybe that receiver's got a little more separation, and maybe it's not a pick, maybe it's a completion. Time will tell. But I don't. This kind of reminds me of earlier in the year when the Jets beat the Browns, and I said, how could you not laugh at anyone that says, "Oh, I can't believe we lost to the Jets"? Like, you're the Browns. And it's
Yeah,
the same thing here. Oh, you're gonna sit Zach Wilson. Mike White's not good. What is Zach Wilson right now? Like,
right.
I don't get it. And I wanted the guy. He was, we went over it a million times. We joked before how, pre-draft, you were all team Fields, I was team Zach. And, I
Mhm.
had my reasons and you had your reasons. Um, but I'm not a Zach Wilson hater. I'm just a
Right.
fan who's looking at how he's playing and saying, look, he needs to sit. They need to get back to square one. And the frustrating thing, I'll just touch on this real quick before you take over, is that this is now like 3 or 4 quarterbacks in a row. Not only are they busts, but the Jets have this pattern of drafting quarterbacks and then like 2 years later being like, we have to teach this guy how to throw a football. Like, how do you get drafted that high? What did
Yep.
you do to him in those 2 years? We heard it with Sam. We heard it with Gino. I mean, Hackenberg, forget about it. But like, you keep drafting these guys to be NFL quarterbacks, and then
Yep.
in a pretty short time saying, we're gonna sit back and teach this guy to throw. Like, that's concerning to me.
Yeah, exactly. And you should already know how to do all those things. And to all the people that like have hit me up, whether it's on Twitter or just, by text message, like family members, friends, they always ask like, what's wrong with Zach Wilson? And I was like, honestly, the best thing he's done so far has been drafted second overall. He just has not lived up to any of those expectations. And unfortunately,
Well,
you can't help where you're drafted, but that's just the case where we're at right now. And I'm not going to take any, victory laps on Justin Fields just because he's playing better right now. Obviously, I still think, like you said, Zach's potential could bring him somewhere, but Fields right now is a better player. And if you're going to ask him to be half of what he is from a skill set perspective this weekend, I agree. Just sit him. It's not worth it. There's no need to risk further injury. I know it's his non-throwing shoulder, but when you're a mobile quarterback, you've already taken so many hits. I think he's like top 3 or 4 in the league in quarterback hits in general. So that's before the designed runs and everything came into effect. So that's his game. He's a physical player. We saw it at Ohio State, but I don't think it's worth putting half of a Justin Fields out there when you have a Trevor Siemian who's competent enough, just like a Mike White, to run the offense, know when your guys are going to be open, because that's what the Jets aren't dealing with either. Zach Wilson doesn't not know the playbook. Zach Wilson knows the playbook, and I assume that he knows it like very well. He's just scared to trust his eyes, and his brain and his eyes and his feet are not in sync, and he's not doing what he needs to do. But you
but
mentioned.
real quick though,
Sure.
Dylan. So one thing you said there, the most important word you used there, and I meant to bring this up when I was going over Zach. I think my number one fear with him right now, not to use the same word, but is I think he's scared.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't mean to like call him out like, oh, he's not a
No.
he's not a man, and blah, 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 but
No.
you watch him play, like, it kind of makes sense now that like the bailing on the clean pockets, like
Hmm.
he panics when he thinks he's going to get pressured. So if you're running away from pressure that isn't even there, and what was it? Someone tweeted it out the other day. Like, Zach Wilson's like the only quarterback in 18 or 20 years or something to complete 30% or fewer of his passes under pressure, and he's done it 2 years in a row. So it's happened twice in the last 20 years, and both times it was Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
So I really think that he is scared of pressure. One of the throws that could have been, or non-throws that could have been a touchdown that Dan Orlovsky showed the other day. Orlovsky said, like, look, man, I see that there's a D lineman who's getting penetration, but you got to hang in there and make that throw and take the hit. Like,
Yep.
that comes with the job description. And I think that's like, if you had to say what's your one biggest concern with Zach Wilson right now, it would be that, like, is he willing to take a hit?
Yep.
Because, and I think I said to you a few weeks ago, Greg Rainoff, one of our listeners, the great Van Halen historian,
Hmm.
and diehard Jets fan, and he
Love
messaged
Greg.
me. He said, "Can you remember Zach making a big throw while taking a hit?" And I thought I remembered one in his NFL debut. I think he had one against Carolina, a really
Hmm.
impressive throw when he took a
They did
hit.
come after him.
That was the only one I could remember. I was like,
Hmm.
geez, I can't remember him standing tough in the pocket and just taking a hit. And listen, man, you got an NFL quarterback who doesn't want to get tackled. It's like,
Yeah.
once that's apparent, it's time to go. like that. I don't. That's fight or flight. You're not going to coach that out of him. So
Exactly, and the
that my like
meniscus.
if I
Oh,
had to
sorry.
make a list of concerns about Zach Wilson right now, the yips would be second behind. Is he does he have that the intestinal fortitude to hang in there and take the beating that's going to be required of some NFL quarterbacks, no matter how good your O line is. You're going to have days where they get to you, especially
Yep.
in the postseason.
Yeah, exactly. When you're down two starters technically on your right side of the line, obviously things are to be expected. But yeah, it's just when you watch him play and he's running out of those pockets, remember the red zone when they're backed up in their own end zone. He just scrambles away from Dietrich Wise and throws it away. And those are the types of plays when you leave a clean pocket that get you holding in the end zone for a safety, or stupid mistakes on your offensive line that make them look bad because you're just running away from nothing. So yeah, I'm glad that you stopped me on the scared part. And
And for
one
anyone who
thing,
didn't see it, Dylan, I think is that the play with Dwayne Brown that Orlovsky pointed out?
I believe no, yes, I believe that's one of the plays. And I
It was
went
them
back and
deep
I
in their own
saw,
end zone. For anyone
uh,
who missed it, Dan
y-
Orlovsky was showing some of the responses of his teammates.
yep.
And there was a play where the Jets were backed up against their own end zone. Zach rolled out, throws an incomplete pass, and you see Dwayne Brown after the play, his arms go up, and he's like, "Come on, man! Like, I'm out here playing hurt for this."
And
And
that was
and
not the first time that Dwayne Brown did that. I'm glad you brought it up. So this is the second time the Jets have done this season. They had a questionable call that would convert a first down, and instead of waiting for the other team to challenge, they rushed up to the line and ran a play. When they ran that play, Dwayne Brown took a very wide set, and it did not look like they were supposed to be running the ball, but Zach just handed the ball backward to James Robinson, and he got a 3-yard loss on that first down. Same thing. Dwayne Brown went, like, why are we even running the ball? Because there's three New England defenders on top of James in the backfield. So
right,
Dwayne Brown's body language was like the final straw for me, on top of Zach's press game or post game conference when he said no, he doesn't feel bad for the defense. Well, you should feel bad for the offensive players that literally protect you, that are playing through a season ending injury and I understand he's making a generous amount of money to play for the
right.
Jets,
But
but
he should have taken the year
he's
off.
out there and said, "Hey, this team has what it takes. I believe in them. I'm going to join up and I'm going to protect Zach Wilson." And it did not look like he wanted to protect Zach Wilson at the end of that game. But the stat I wanted to get to, because you kept bringing up Zach on pace for 8 touchdowns. Flacco obviously has more touchdowns, 5 in the season, than Zach does, 4 passing. Flacco
Hmm.
had 4 against Cleveland. So, like, in one game, we had production from a quarterback that was outplaying Zach for the whole season in terms of finding the end zone. So, obviously, I agree Mike White can find the end zone at a larger clip than Zach Wilson. Spoiler alert, 1 is better than 0. So, Mike White getting in the end zone once is going to be better than what we saw last week. And
Right.
and people forget, when Zach Wilson was hurt last year, excuse me, he missed 3.5, 4 games, and we were the number one offense under 3 different quarterbacks:
I
Flacco,
know.
White, and Josh Johnson.
Yep.
Josh Johnson came in
Yep.
there against Indianapolis and threw for like 345 in
I
a
would be I
loss.
would
But
be thrilled with Josh Johnson as the quarterback on this team right now.
that's what I honestly wanted to go and see if he was on a practice squad, if we could just snag him for the week and just
He's on a
throw
roster.
him
Where
out.
is he? I saw
I
him. I
think
saw
he's a
him recently.
backup in Baltimore or somewhere. I forget.
Yeah,
I'd have to look it up, but I was questioning that too. I
I
was like,
saw him somewhere. Yeah.
so we've seen that this offense under other, leadership from the quarterback position can ball out. And I'm not saying Mike White is going to go do 405 against the Bengals again, but this is the chance where he can. And if that's the case and we do win this game, how do you say no to Mike White again next week? You have to roll with what is
Oh,
working.
you're
And
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
that and that's what makes
Even
it
if
tough.
the intention is to go back to Zach, if
Mhm.
Mike White's playing winning football, like and not being a liability, then he stays in there till he's not. Now, if he loses a couple and they sort of fall out of the playoff hunt, fine. Go back to Zach for the last 2 games of the season. But until you're out of the playoff hunt, or Mike White is difficult to imagine worse than Zach has been, then he stays in there.
Exactly. And we have a couple questions in the chat here that we can
I was going
couple
to say we should get some
that
of
we
those.
can
Yeah.
couple together. Yeah, for sure. KD says, is Zach the backup next season in your opinion? And before we answer that, I want to couple it with Mr. Majax saying, what kind of deal would it take to sign Jimmy G? And I think obviously these two would work, because if you sign Jimmy G, obviously he would come in and not compete with Zach Wilson. He would be the starter, especially after what you saw Monday night in Mexico City against the Cardinals, where he threw for like 230 yards, 4 touchdowns, best performance of the season. So obviously, you mentioned it in your video earlier today, which I advise everybody to go check out all our videos this week. Glenn put out tons of good ones. I think you're up to 3 this week. I only have 1. This is our second, so 5 total this week. So go check them all out on JetNation's YouTube page. But Jimmy Garoppolo would be the type of quarterback that this offense actually needs. And I know it sounds silly considering all the hate that Jimmy G gets for being like a game manager or whatever, but that's literally what we've been preaching for all year, is that we need a game manager with a little bit more upside than what Zach has been bringing. And Jimmy G would be the perfect candidate. I'm obviously not going to sit here and assign a dollar amount to what it would take to get Jimmy G here, but if you can get him here for 1 year with maybe some void years tacked on at the end or something, I think Jimmy G is probably your best bet. I don't think it's worth swinging for the fences on like a Lamar Jackson and totally overhauling your offense to fit the scheme, even though I think Mike LaFleur is capable of doing that, but that's just too much when you can have a Jimmy G for a lesser and still do what you want to do. So what are your thoughts on Jimmy G versus Zach Wilson next year being a backup / competing role?
Listen, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, he just makes too much sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, guaranteed to hit free agency, knows the offense, has won big time games. The Jets, as I said earlier, would 1,000,000% be in first place right now. I saw that.
Thank you, Brian.
They would 1,000,000% be in first place right now if he was the quarterback.
Yep.
But the crazy thing is that this team, or with quarterback salaries right now, like somebody said to me earlier, bringing in Jimmy G is going to cost $30 million a year, and I thought that's crazy talk, right?
Mm.
But you look at the salaries out there,
Mm-hmm.
and there are guys like Jared Goff. Average salary is $33 million. Matt Ryan is 30. Ryan Tannehill is 29. Jimmy G might cost 30. I mean,
He might.
those guys aren't, I mean, is Ryan Tannehill that much better than Jimmy G? And again, you're talking a year, another year, salaries just go up and up every year. So maybe he does cost them, which as crazy as it sounds. I'm thinking max 22, 23.
Sure.
But listen, if I keep coming back to this, and I've been saying it for a few weeks now that with the Zach thing, with him struggling, like we saw this with Mark Sanchez. We saw how you can have a phenomenal roster that doesn't win a Super Bowl because the quarterback isn't good enough. And we saw how quickly that window can close when you have that Super Bowl window. Like when the Jets made those back-to-back AFC Championship games, you had a young quarterback. Now, granted, this team across the board is much younger. But Jets fans were like, oh, we're set. Like the next 8-9 years, we're contenders.
Yep.
And then, boom, like that, just off the face
1
of the
year
earth,
later.
10 years of misery. So now that window's opening again, I'm like, pounce, do something. If Jimmy G costs $30 million, so be it. If that means they go 12-4 next year and get a playoff, a bye, whatever, make it happen. And I get that, that's a lot for Jimmy G, but listen, you can move money around. Guys can be cut. There are guys that have huge contracts coming up who you can, either rework or let them go, whatever it may be. But a GM has to be able to move money around to bring in a quarterback. And it seems the Jets don't have one. So it's got to be a possibility. And I can't see why you wouldn't. Like I said, it just makes too much sense to bring him in. I don't think he'll take a 1 year deal because if he keeps playing the way he is, the Jets are going to have some competition for him. But you would think they'd be the favorites because he'd have a chance to win. He'd be in a major market and he'd know the offense.
Yeah, I think all those like familiarity points will help with that situation. I'm not exactly sure how he left New England, but I just feel like his whole journey, he's always just been underappreciated, and for what he is, he's actually not a terrible option. Obviously, if you want to break the bank and Woody Johnson wants to, go outside Lamar Jackson's house with the speaker and throw him all the money that he wants,
I
sure.
don't see him leaving Baltimore.
I don't see him doing that either. But I'd be on
either.
board at this point, but I don't think it's necessary. This team's truly like a quarterback away from being, like you said, 12-4. Like this team should be realistically 8-2. I know it's like you can't look at it that way, but like with a competent quarterback making 1 to 2 plays a game in those New England games, you're 8-2, and you're probably, I think, tied for first or second in the AFC standings, not just the East, the conference standings. Like you're up there with Kansas City. So if you feel as though you're that one player away, and it's not even a great player, plus you get all the other guys back next year, Mekhi Becton, AVT, Breece Hall, everybody. Corey Davis will be healthy again. So like everybody just coming back, that's what you want. And I'm not, like you said, if it costs $30 million, I'm cool with it. Cap is kind of flexible. I'm not going to say it's a complete myth because the Jets have shown us this year with void contracts that it's not a myth. And even teams that aren't necessarily strapped like the Saints for cash like they can get up against the cap and have to make room. So I'm all in favor of it. So I'm glad that they pointed that out because Jimmy G did have the best game of his season Monday night, and I truthfully think it's gonna only start their season over. I feel like now that they have McCaffrey, they have Jimmy G, playing well, Kittle, Debo, they're going to probably make a Super Bowl run. So it's always just going to make it that much harder when it comes to signing a contract of a guy because if they
Imagine
do
being a
go
Niners
far,
fan, knowing he might make it to the Super Bowl. You can't re-sign him, and you've got Trey Lance.
yeah, and obviously the team is looking at it the same way too. Like, shoot, if
Mhm.
we actually make it this far, like, did we make the wrong decision in letting him leave? And I feel like they've already tried to, they've risked their hand this season, and it clearly backfired on them.
This
So
is
I
like
don't think
dream scenario for Jimmy G.
how many times can you dance with the devil? And I feel like we're gonna find out this season that Jimmy G, his time is up in San Francisco, and whether he comes to New York or not, I don't know. I watched Monday night and I just got so excited. I was tweeting out, I got to learn how to consistently spell Garoppolo so I don't mess it up. But that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about this game in Chicago. I know you only have a couple more minutes here. What are your thoughts? Obviously, we could see Trevor Siemian versus Mike White. Let's just go off the. You can pick either side. If it's Fields, if it's Siemian, what do you want to see from this defense? That's just 17 sacks in the last 3 games.
Well, listen, they just if it is Fields, they just have to do a better job of spying the quarterback and not
Hmm.
letting them run all over them. That's one of the problems you get with some of the backers. CJ Mosley, as well as he's played, the guy's gonna have a million tackles this year. He's not a guy who's going to keep up with Fields, and not a lot of guys are. Let's face it, there's not too many linebackers who can. So do you spy a nickel? Do you do something where you get somebody who's a little bit more athletic to try to keep an eye on him? But the guy just he's such a threat on the ground, and that's one area where the Jets defense, as good as it has been, if you go through week to week, you'll see a lot of quarterbacks have had a lot of success running the ball against this Jets defense. So that's the biggest factor is if Fields doesn't play, I think the Jets defense just dominates. Especially with a week like this with the turmoil and the all the talk. I think the defense is going to want to come out and have another lights out performance. They're going to be at home. The fans are going to be amped.
Oh
Because
yeah,
Mike, everyone
Revis.
loves the backup quarterback and everyone
Yep.
loves Mike White. So it's going to be the place is going to be rocking. And I think that if the Jets can contain Fields or if Fields doesn't go, I think they win in a blowout.
Yeah, and just to touch on their rushing production, ever since Fields kind of got his feet underneath him in the designed run game, since week 6, 237, 243, 240, 252, 258, and last week 160 with an injured Justin Fields. So those are their rushing totals for those games. So they're on a tear on the ground. So obviously if the Jets can bottle up the pass, regardless of whoever's at quarterback, and then dedicate a ton of bodies to the run. I know Khalil Herbert is on IR for them, so it's David Montgomery and a couple backups behind him. I feel like if Justin Fields isn't in this game, yeah, the Jets should dominate. There's half of, if not more, of their production, especially in the red zone, is gone if Fields is off the field from a rushing standpoint. So I'm totally in agreement with you. Do you have a prediction real quick before we hop on out of here?
Yeah, look, I think the Jets are going to shut them down. I think Mike White's going to manage to navigate the offense to a couple of touchdowns. I think like I said, defense is going to be the biggest factor, but I'm going to say 27-10 Jets.
Okay, yep, that's along the same lines. I had 23-10 Jets. I feel like after what we saw last week against New England, there's no reason to think that this team is going to let up a touchdown to a Trevor Siemian led offense or a hurt Justin Fields, especially in the pass game. Like I said a couple weeks ago, you throw the ball up against this secondary, and most likely it's an incompletion at best for your offense because we just have the dogs back there, DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. So yeah, I'm in agreement. 23-10. I feel like no matter who the quarterback is, because the Jets defense is going to disrupt Justin Fields regardless. So let's hope Mike White can find pay dirt a couple times, get the running backs involved. Michael Carter would be huge to get him involved again after last week. 19 rushes for 33 yards for the running backs. So just not a good output from them in general. So we're going to wrap this one up here. I know Glenn's at work, so he's got to get out of here. And this is our 5th show of the week. It's a holiday week, and everybody's got to get ready for Thanksgiving tomorrow.
Have a great
So
Thanksgiving.
yep, absolutely. From everybody at JetNation, have a great Thanksgiving. You can follow Glenn on Twitter at AceFan23. Follow his draft account at Jets Picks. He's going to be posting tons of clips of college prospects throughout the week and the whole draft process. You can follow me on Twitter at DTereman. And until next time, like Frankie said in the chat, it's bear hunting season. Let's go, Jets.